and then if you're want to have the speakers introduce themselves, and then if everybody else wants to do intros in the chat, that would be great. So let's start the speaker intros with Genesis.
Hi, so my name is Genesis Holland. I am a Justice and Joy Research Fellow, speaker. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Virginia, and I'm very glad to be here today. I'll give a lot more details about my background when I'm speaking for a little longer.
Thanks, Genesis. Taylor?
Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor Easterly. I am a member of the Modoc Nation. I am a California native. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. 27, and I am a student parent who is the steering committee lead on the Impact Project, who is hosted by Justice and Joy National Collaborative.
Celinda?
Thank you. I'm Celinda Lake, and I am part of the polling team from Lake Research Partners. I'm with Roshni from HIT Strategies, who will introduce herself in a moment. I also have two members of our team on here, Kate Gormley and Jenna Scarborough. So we are very excited to be part of this. And this has been like 25-year dream. So it's really exciting to see this vision come to fruition. And Roshni, I'll turn it to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Roshni. I use she, her pronouns. I am a founding partner and chief research officer at HIT Strategies. So we're a member of the polling and research team as well here. Unfortunately, my team couldn't be on today, but we also have Ashley Aylward and Erica Tebbs, who are on our team, who are going to make up the rest of the polling and research team.
Wonderful, wonderful. So welcome, Miranda. I asked folks to introduce themselves in the chat, so if you could do that, that'd be great. It does feel like, it was Akia, right? You said it feels like a party. It does feel like a party, and a very welcome one. I'm just going to do a little bit of context setting and hand it off to our young, brilliant leaders, and then we'll hear about the research strategy, do some questions, conversations, and keep it moving. So, just a little bit about how we came to this work. I think most of you know who Justice and Joy is. You know, we're a gender and racial justice, national advocacy and organizing nonprofit, and we have staff in 12 states. We have young folks on the ground, and I think over 30 states, and partners in about 48 states and many tribal nations. So we have pretty significant reach in local communities. All of our national work actually is rooted in what's happening in local communities and flows up versus the opposite way. So I think we came to this work as a natural extension of the policy advocacy and organizing work that we do. We've always, you know, we do a lot of work bringing young folks on critical policy issues to DC, creating mechanisms and tools for education and information, a lot of storytelling, narrative shifting work, research work. But I think we hit a pivotal point, and I'll say I certainly did personally, when we, because of the Supreme Court, the Dobbs decision and all the decisions that followed that really were, for me, just could have been paralyzing. I think because as someone that was, you know, I was in my late teens when Roe passed and advocated for all the same issues we're advocating for now as an organizer on college campuses, and really kind of stopped to pause to think about how in the space of my lifetime did we end up here, which is looking back at all we won and all we've lost. And I just really started to think about what is one of the fundamental things about Justice and Joy is that we are intergenerational. Not that that is always easy, but is definitely the right way to do it. And it came to me that what we had, where we dropped the ball from my perspective as a young organizer to now being 67, is that we didn't create those intergenerational connections. We believed, I think we got busy, right, trying to achieve the American dream, and we didn't do the warm handoff, right, that we always have to be working for these issues related to justice. We can't ever rest, certainly not now, believing that we've achieved them. So we started having conversations and looking at the population that we work with and for, and we really focus on system impacted, and those who have faced chronic adversity, predominantly generational adversity, girls, young women, and gender expansive young people, most marginalized, most invisible. And we looked at the numbers, we thought about the power, the passion, the commitment that they have to making the world a better place, and thought, wouldn't it be amazing if they were the ones to save us from the fate to which we seem to be going full speed to? And so we said, let's do it. Let's try something different. Let's be broader, deeper, more expansive, and look at increasing civic engagement, certainly with an eye towards 2024, but also with an eye towards the long term, creating the mechanism for the warm handoff between generations. So we keep our eye focused on the issues and achieving justice over time. So that's organizationally how we ended up here. We were very thrilled. Celinda kind of referred to it, but Celinda and I have been talking about trying to do this kind of research, she will say, since kindergarten. That is not true, but it has been a couple decades. And we're really excited to be able to work with this partnership of Lake Research and HIT Strategies. Really, really excited about it. Really feel like we have a dream team here. So I'm going to stop. That's the context setting. And I'm going to hand it to Genesis to bring us into why is this work so important?
Hello, all. As stated before, my name is Genesis Holland, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself and how I ended up here today. Even though I hope this is a very youth accepting and advocating space, I know some of you may be wondering, why am I a voice that you should listen to? You know, why am I here? Hopefully by the time I finish speaking and you'll also hear Taylor speak, and trust me, it will be amazing, you'll be able to give me some measure of authority. So like many say, I stumbled into this work quite by accident. Though if any of you were born into it, then I applaud you, because I sure wasn't. I thought I was going to be a singer, and as previously talked about, I cannot do that. Very pitchy. So I was just a girl with a passion, a voice with no outlet. And when I started volunteering with various nonprofits, I sort of fell into this work, speaking out about the injustices that I've witnessed, that I've seen, that I have faced myself. I was raised socially conscious. I was brought up on the strength of a grandmother who did sit-ins and a young mother who was just trying to show me how to navigate the system that never cared about me nor my identity. And as a young person of today, we have been grounded with this triple sense of awareness of the inequalities and injustices I talked about. And as I stated before, and as Danette talked about, it's a repeat cycle. And each time it's nothing new, but it seems to worsen with the repetition. With everything at our fingertips, my entire generation seems to know everything that the government has done to wrong us, everything that we think society has done to fail us. And this cycle and bombardment of information has caused us to really affect our very perspective on government. I realized that given these problems that we face, the best thing that I can do is, when given the opportunity to speak, is to do it. If for nothing else, then for those who don't, who can't, or feel like if they did it, it wouldn't matter. And unfortunately, that seems to be the trend. We want to speak, but we don't think it will matter. And it's been proven that in some cases, it truly doesn't. I'm doing this for the voices that are heard but never answered. Nothing is better than hearing it directly from the source. But that is why we do this democracy work. It is so important to speak for the voices that will never speak but have so much to say. If we are going to have a democracy that reflects the voices of the American people, we must first have a democracy that talks to the very youth that starts it all. We're the future, quote unquote, yet can we be the present too? Can we be acknowledged in the past? Are we only stuck in one form? It should not just be a want, but a need and a duty. I got started with Justice and Joy by volunteering and always saying yes to things. And if you know a little bit about Justice and Joy, they will always have a lot to say yes to. but they have made a space that we can talk about the things that affect us as young people: police brutality, reproductive justice, these issues that are very key and divisive, yet very underrepresented. I encourage everyone to also go read some of these newsletters and newses from Justice and Joy, which I'm sure you guys are already a fan of, but do it again. I promise it'll be a good read. But this has led to a fatigue in the ballots. It has led to a fatigue in our heart. And, you know, a lot of the time we wonder, when does the fight end, if ever? And I think all of this is caused by a lack of acknowledgement. We have no right to only listen to one voice or perspective when there are so many out there. Acknowledge our biases and differences and all the uncomfortable things. And maybe we can have an America that is represented. Maybe we can have fair ballots. Maybe we can have a place where we all feel free. And to talk about uncomfortable things, I wrote a little speech towards today's change makers. As a young activist, I've heard many times about the proverbial table, the one that no woman, bi, POC, gender expansive, or LGBT people can get a seat at. In response, the change makers of today, you have created a table of your own, one that encourages inclusivity and a voice to all as we strive for a better world. To that I ask, how does it feel to sit there? Because in spite of speaking on panels, giving workshops, and protesting for the change you all fight for, I fear I'll never know what that chair feels like. Sure, I'll be allowed a chance on temporary time and temporary attention. But before I even begin to settle into the cushions, I'll be ushered away. This is the table you are creating, a temporary one. A revolving door of young voices who are heard but not remembered, who are spoken over and not with. I hear often we need to create a new generation of change makers, and I resent the phrasing. We are not new. We have not popped in front of you shiny and untouched by the toil of today. We come in front of you with knowledge, experience. We are tired. We are angry, and we said it in just about as many ways as we can take. We no longer want to fix and maintain, protecting power under the guise of peace. I am not fighting for a system that would rather see me choke than admit they are the reason I can't breathe. However, I can't talk of a progressive future if leaders give me a broken microphone. Being an expert in your field does not make you the authority, and not silencing young voices does not equate to helping them either. If a cohesive and strong future is truly what you want, then you must make a path that all of us can walk. You must step outside of your ego. Allow those who are not your colleagues to critique and speak to you as if they are your equal, if equality is truly what you fight for. If it is not, continue the way you are and see the cycle of injustice continue. Watch as you become another structure to fight against. Allow us to help you. Allow us to be represented in the fight for our future. Bring us to the voting booth and let us change the world together, or it won't change at all. I leave you all with this closing question. When you are highlighting young voices, are you making a space to fill them or using them? Are you making space or using them to fill it?
Thank you, Genesis.
Yay!
Beautiful.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Taylor?
All right. Wakwisla, everybody. That is a Modoc saying for hello and welcome, my friends. I'm here today. I'll just give a brief background on my advocacy work and activism. For me, it started in my childhood and truly intergenerational before I was born. My grandmother was an advocate for Indigenous folks, specifically throughout the US and for our nation, to create awareness and bring attention to the storytelling and the voices which were already here and very powerful, that have been traditionally ignored and suppressed. And we see that today currently as, excuse me, I'm a little nervous, everybody. We see that today continuing as our voices as young women and gender expansive youth of color have been ignored and pushed away as, excuse me. Whew. Sorry, y'all. Okay. We see that continuing today when our voices are being pushed and shunned and ignored. And it is at our footsteps as young women and gender expansive youth to propel our voices and to create a way for our future children and our children's children to excel and thrive. And that is something that I feel very personal to and very attached to as an Indigenous woman, to be able to create ways to teach our language to others and to recall our true selves and our holistic approaches to creating safety and certainty. Excuse me as I look at my notes. As young women of color and gender expansive youth, we have remained invisible around solutions, yet we have been pioneers historically in creating solutions. Justice and Joy's unapologetic action approach to create positivity and to catalyze us young people to vote and to become civic leaders to reform democratic and social institutions for the better is by far one of the most powerful approaches I have yet seen in all of my advocacy work throughout my life. Creating a stage to be heard, to be acknowledged, and truly valued for our experiences that have been slipped through the cracks. A little bit about my background is I had asked our institutions for help, and I was one of few women that I know of that slipped through the cracks and was not taken care of at a place where I truly needed. And from this, I was given a great gift, which is my child, a child with special needs. And with our journey through varying institutions, we have been ignored. We have had to fight against our institutions to have basic necessities even met for care, for health, for education, and it has just been a constant struggle. So with this platform that Justice and Joy has created to really show what has been going on as us as moms and gender expansive youth of color, for me specifically, have just been neglected. And we would like to create change and make sure that other women and gender expansive youth do not continue to be neglected and uncared for. For that gives a huge reason as to why they would not want to participate in politics and to create change in our democracy. So we must fix the foundation on which we stand in order to create change. In our literature that was sent out, Gen Z is the most politically engaged, with the second largest generation in the US after millennials, which is 27% of the population. I'm a millennial, and I have been at the forefront encouraging those at every university I've been to, at Cal Poly, and the community colleges which I have resided, and encouraging my fellow peers and colleagues to vote to create change, and they just don't feel their voices have been heard or met where they are. So excuse me, to elevate our needs and to solidify influence as civic leaders today and in the future, we must raise awareness, which Justice and Joy has given us a platform. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor.
Mhm.
So a little spoiler alert, everybody. If you are in Solidarity We Rise in May, which you all hopefully will be, I was going to say better be, but hopefully will be, you will be able to hear Taylor and her grandmother open one of the plenary sessions singing a traditional song. So you don't want to miss that.
Wow.
So
Very
with that,
exciting.
thank you both. With that, I am going to hand it off to Celinda, all right, to take us through the research.
Thank you so much. And it is such, you want to talk about being intimidated, Taylor? It's very intimidating following you and Genesis. So thank you for the honor of doing that, though. And thank you for your sharing. And as researchers, we love what you have pulled out and found, and the eloquence, Genesis, of your comments. So we are incredibly excited about this project. It is a project that is coming at the right moment. It is of the right scale. It is with the right partners. And usually pollsters are not extravagant in their language, but I totally believe, and we usually put a margin of error next to our statements, but I think I can safely say this is an absolutely game-changing project, and there's no plus or minus error to that statement. So let's, as you know, the team already, and we'll put up the slides to show you, and really glad to, we're gonna take Q&A at the end just so we can give you a full picture and then take any questions. But so please remember your questions and anything that we're not being clear about. And I think, Lizette, you're going to put up the slides, or thank you very much for doing that. So you know our team, you've met them already, Hit Strategies and myself and our firm, not myself, our whole team. And let's talk about the objectives of the project. So this is the title slide, and we go to the next slide. You can see the team in the next slide. We have a number of objectives: gauging young Americans' perceptions of democratic reform, attitudes towards engaging in the reform process, insights on the current state of democracy. And this is a foundational moment. It is a foundational challenge. It is also a foundational moment. And as Jeanette said, yes, obviously this has some 2024 goals, but this is really gearing for the rest of our lives of the people on this call. Upon understanding where young people stand, and we're not even presuming that it's monolith, and we're letting young people speak for themselves. I took so many notes on the language that both of our previous speakers used, but how to fully hear people, how to fully have participation, how to have it in every period of future, present, and past. But we then want to segment our audience, and this is something we've done a lot working with HIT on a number of projects to determine who's in our base, who can we really count on right now, who is persuasion, and who are mobilization audiences. And obviously all of these tasks require persuasion, but there are people with different levels of intensity, knowledge, experience, perceptions. We want to discern the most receptive segments within the young community, and we want to be able to look at them from a very different eye, not your ordinary demographic profile from a survey, but experiential and generational cohorts within age groups. And we want to allocate and strategically allocate resources and efforts more effectively. And we think the long-term perspective that Justice and Joy represents, and experience they have and reach that they have, will make this far more sophisticated and innovative than anything we're seeing to date. We want to identify and test messages that effectively incorporate the language of the aspirations, the concerns of young and diverse demographic. And we want to align these messages with values and aspirations. We want to be forward-looking. We want to have an asset messaging, not a deficit messaging. And we want to shift our paradigm from saving democracy to fixing democracy, increasing civic engagement, and making democracy real. So the first stage of the research, which I'll discuss, is the focus groups. And then the second phase is the survey. And this is a project of great appetite. because originally we came to this as researchers from two very different perspectives, kind of understanding deeply rooted and then looking at the application. And it is Jeanette's great vision and the organization's great vision that they combine the two of them together. So I'm going to talk about the open-ended deep exploration. So focus groups, I think many of you know, are small group discussions. They're structured and open-ended. They are idea generators. They uncover people's experiences, their existing attitudes, their values, their perceptions, their understanding. They can include reaction to language, reaction to messengers, reaction to visuals. And they are places where things are co-created. As well. They're not just handed down from on top. They're 2 hours in length, usually with 8 to 10 people. Some of the groups will be in person, some will be virtual. And you'll see that we're combining them in interesting and both traditional and new ways by race, by age, by gender identity, and adverse experience type. We are deeply grounding ourselves in the experience that and the perspective that Justice and Joy has from their long-term involvement with these young women, gender expansive audiences. If we look at the next slide, you can see the groups that we proposed, and these are not carved in tablets and handed down from above. So there's great openness to talk and think about different groups and doing these in different ways as well. But with input from Justice and Joy and combining all of our experience in the two firms, we identified 8 in-person groups. And all of these include system impacted, gender expansive youth, girls, and young women of color. So the first group, and this is not in any particular order, Black, Latina, Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Native Indigenous teens, ages 16 to 17. We want to get at the youngest cohort here, and 16 is the cutoff for when you need parental permission. So we want to have a very free and open conversation. Then Black women, ages 18 to 25, Latinx, Latina women, ages 18 to 25, Asian American Pacific Islander, 18 to 25, Native and Indigenous women, 18 to 25. So we are combining people in community, but we are also opening this up to conversation that will be homogeneous, where people come in and say, okay, this is comfortable space. I can speak my mind. I can share my experience. I will be understood in my experience. And we always moderate our focus groups, and both of our firms have long traditions in this, with people that representative of the group that is being moderated. 6, 7, and 8 are different age groups of young mothers, and we're really, really intrigued. And then we also, group number 8 is Black, Latina, Asian American, Native, Indigenous young women 18 to 25 who have experienced ACEs. So you can see that we're taking some different cuts and combinations and being very, very creative about this age cohort. And again, this research, I think, will be game-changing. It will bring silenced voices to the table and have it be a real table, not a rotating table. And I think bring new perspectives that are understood by many of the people on this call, but not broadly understood by our society or our advocate groups or our activists and politicians. Then in terms of virtual groups, and we think in-person groups have some advantage because you get the group interaction and cohesion. Virtual groups have some advantage because you also create safer space, and you can also recruit across geography. So there are 4 virtual groups that we're proposing: gender expansive, Black, Latinx, Asian American, Pacific Islander, and Native Indigenous people ages 16 to 19. Then young women in the same groups, 18 to 25, who have experienced adverse childhood experiences, the same who are survivors of sexual exploitation. And we will need the massive connections that Joy and Justice have. And I always get that wrong. I just love the Joy part so much, I put it first. But Justice and Joy and the connections that they have to make this kind of recruitment possible, and also to create safe space and to create supported space. so that people are not triggered or left without support. And then transgender women ages 18 to 25. If we look at, and I think you can have all of these slides, so I know that's a lot of things to mull all at once. Let me turn it over to Roshni to talk about the second phase of the research, which is the messaging survey.
Thank you, Celinda, and thank you, Genesis and Taylor, for kicking this off. I really appreciate everything that you both said, and we're so excited to be involved with this project. A part of why I started Hit Strategies with my business partner, Terrence, was we really wanted to create a pipeline for young people of color, especially in this industry, create seats at the table for people who look like us to be the decision makers on a lot of these projects. And so I'm so excited to work with both of you and all of the Justice and Joy cohort and folks here, especially as we get to share your insights on a lot of the research that we'll be doing too. So I think many of you are familiar with this type of research. We often see survey research coming before focus groups so that we can test messaging and then go into focus groups and kind of pick that messaging apart. But in this case, we wanted to be deliberate about doing focus groups first, because I think, as you heard Genesis and Taylor highlight, it's really important for us to meet these women and gender expansive youth where they are and understand what language they're using to think about the problems that we're facing in this country and the problems that they're facing in their communities, and then apply that to the messaging that we're using to reach out to them. So that's why we ordered it in this way, starting with focus groups and then moving into our messaging survey. So we take all of the insights that we hear from people in the focus groups and then construct messaging around the wording that we heard in the qualitative to make sure that the messages that we're testing are applicable and not just what we as pollsters think the communities are talking about and hearing about. So the first phase of the messaging work is going to be this messaging survey. We're going to use this to segment various target groups within demographics and then determine our most effective messages for each segment. Specifically for this one, it's effective messages in order to mobilize people towards civic engagement with the 2024 elections. But we're also thinking a little bit longer term. What does civic engagement look like beyond 2024? And how do we bring young women, girls, and gender expansive youth of color into the fold in order to be more civically engaged long term? So our plans for this survey are to do a national survey. We're going to be doing sampling women ages 18 to 25. We haven't settled on a full design yet, but either 1,000 sample or 1,500 sample, and that will be representative of young women population nationally. We'll do 15 minutes, and then we have some oversample options here of Black women, Asian American, Pacific Islander women, Hispanic and Latina women, system impacted women. We'll have a oversample of gender expansive youth of color. And then we also have some combinations of battleground states. We had 3 in mind immediately. The first are our 2024 abortion battleground states. The second are our 2024 Senate battleground states. And then the third is where Justice and Joy and partner organizations are going to be doing a lot of groundwork, both in 2024, but also just generally civic engagement groundwork beyond 2024. So states where there's a lot of program where we're going to want to test this messaging and its effectiveness in bringing folks in. So once we do that and we get through this messaging survey segment, we can go to the next slide. But we'll create some content. So either social media content, online advertising content, we could create some videos depending on where our messaging is landing. But we'll work with the teams to create some content and then move into an online qualitative board phase. These qualitative boards are a little bit like, they look a little bit like a Facebook messaging board. So as we are moderating them, we'll kind of ask an open-ended question. People will be able to type out a response to us. They can also respond in the form of video. When we have them interact with the content, they'll be able to highlight what they like. They'll be able to scribble over what they don't like. And we can do some heat mapping on some of the content as well, which is why we really wanted to test this content in this Qualboard type platform. But we're going to be doing these in-depth discussions. We'll have between 20 and 30 people in each board. And we'll include varying demographic and socioeconomic backgrounds in each board as well. Right now, we have 3 boards in mind to do and test some of this content with. So we'll be doing our battleground state qual boards. And again, these will be some combination of the abortion, Senate, or where Justice and Joy and partner organizations have program running in 2024. But we'll do one of young women ages 18 to 25 and one of system impacted young women ages 18 to 25. And then we'll also have a non-battleground state qual boards. Again, this is really thinking towards how we engage beyond 2024. So young women ages 18 to 25 in our non-battleground states, to make sure that the messaging that we tested in these battleground states in the poll and in the qual boards is also more widely applicable and has the longevity that we're looking for. So next slide. All in all, the total research budget, and I think the costs that we have in this last column here are with the most expansive version of the research budget. So all in all, you'll see between the focus groups, the messaging survey, and the online qualitative boards, the budget at this point is about $555,000. And yeah, I think that's all for us. So I think I'll hand it back to Jeanette.
Thanks, Roshni. So just a couple things I want to add, and then I want to come back to Celinda and Roshni with a question. So just as background, all of this work, and you see Genesis and Taylor here today, but all of this work, we will have a youth advocates board council, we don't know what we're going to call them yet, of young folks from across the country. Lisette has already reached out to folks, and there's a high level of interest and participation in just being really involved in the formative stages, following along the research. So that's one thing. The other thing is that we do have a partnership already established with, I'm forgetting the name, but the Ms. Foundation has a C4 that we will partner with in the event that we get to the point where we need to be doing work outside of our 501c3. So that's already been accounted for. I think that there will be some addition to some of the focus groups. We're talking to folks that are interested in adding groups, and so we're kind of negotiating that now. Maybe an addition of an immigrant and refugee focus group a set of research, I think, is probably going to happen. So still somewhat in the formative stages. This gets started tomorrow. We're kicking it off. I'll talk about the funds we've raised and what we still need at the end. I just wanted to share that we are rocking and rolling. Our plan right now is to share some top line results at In Solidarity in May to launch it. And yeah, we're really excited. My question back to Roshni and Celinda, I know we've talked before, but could you kind of share your feeling on funder engagement in the focus groups? How you feel about that? What would the opportunities be, et cetera?
Yes, Linda, did you want to talk about the focus groups, or do you want me to jump in here?
I'd love for you to jump in, and then I can jump in.
Sure. Yeah. So we do a lot of work together, and we do a lot of work with coalitions like yours. And so I think engagement is at whatever level you all are comfortable engaging, but we'll definitely have a lot of touch points for you in terms of ability to jump in on drafts, read through drafts, make sure that they're reflective of your organization and your organization's programs and goals, as well as be able to during focus groups, especially if they're online, be able to watch while it's streaming live, or have access to the video later. And then I think once we do presentation phases of each phase, pull together a call like this to walk through each of the findings for each phase before we move into the next phase to make sure that we're all learning together and then putting those learnings together and applying them to the next phase of work.
And I think two other things I would add, and thank you, Roshni. We usually, because we have a lot of groups, we usually build a pause in, like between a first set and a second set to assess what's working, what's not working in the guide. And then what do we want to change? What do we want to keep? What do we want to tweak? What are we missing? So that's another point. And then we both our firms start out with what we call an immersion stage, where we really want to get input from all of the stakeholders. In part, this research isn't going to be as innovative and groundbreaking if we don't have all of this rich input. And one of the reasons we're psyched about Justice and Joy is it brings to the table, through its already existing mechanisms, so much input from all the communities, and treats donors as a community and reaching out to young people as well. So we want that immersion and also that stakeholder involvement, because again, this will work the best if it represents all of those innovative ideas, and it will work the best if it's not handed down from above, but people feel ownership over it and input into it. And that's how we're going to get the best product and the newest ideas. So those are two other points that we have. We're also, if people have preferences, and as funders, if you have preferences for this kind of feedback, this kind of input, whatever, we are very open. Everything on this design, everything on the way we're approaching it is very flexible. So we are eager and open to new ways of doing things and different conversations.
Great, thanks, Celinda. So after all that is done, then we get to work in terms of building strategies, tools, messages, campaigns, and we hit the ground running in some specific states, but also nationally, providing tools, educational opportunities. We don't really know what it will look like until we see the research, but we know the timeline is that we want to be up with something by late summer, early fall. Pretty exciting, pretty fast, but deeply, deeply needed. So questions, thoughts?
And Jeanette, if I can just add too,
For sure.
I think we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. So we do want this, there's a reason for such a fulsome design, but there are also learnings all the way along. And that they'll be sharing mechanisms. And of course, Jeanette in her personal, in her person, and then in her organizational life has always redefined what open source means. But we are eager to provide those insights along the way too. So there'll be learnings all the way along, all year long.
Thoughts, questions?
Go ahead, Ada. I'll go after you.
So actually, Linda, what you said about the learnings all the way around and all the way along, I'm curious, are you going to use those learnings and all the way along as well? Because those are like great shots to use in those moments of advocacy, I think. And civic engagement, like they're like great little like pop moments.
That's a great point. And so the answer is definitively yes. Use it all the way along in informing the next stage of the research, and use it all the way along. And of course, with all of you and through Justice and Joy, and I'll turn it over to Jeanette's resources, networks, etc. There are lots of avenues for sharing all the way along. It's a great point that you make also, which I hadn't really thought about. I was thinking of it as kind of in the rhythm of the research, of course, as a researcher, but you make a great point. There will be windows that we should be sure to organize around, that we can have sharings around. So that honestly wasn't something I had particularly thought through, but I think that's a really good idea. And there will be natural windows where we should share what we found today. And there's such a hunger and such a desert out there right now. It's pretty unnerving, honestly.
Well, because we have such brilliant folks in Taylor and Genesis, you know, this is like so rich that I think if you did have those moments of lifting up some of that knowledge, and we happen to have Jesse Moore here, who is a communication
Yeah.
genius guru. He could, you know, him and his team could be, and Kalisha, they could be the ones pulling out the policy, throwing that out, and you know, garnering the attention. Because the way, Roshni, you talk about the surveys and the data and using that as like social media hooks to get people excited about what you're learning, and also advance that knowledge as a civic engagement point throughout this, throughout how, you know, how it's going. You're also galvanizing young people to do work along the way, right? So there's like a civic engagement moment each time. So yeah, just don't want to lose the brilliance of young people. And
For sure. And it's not a coincidence that Jesse is on the call and that Dominique James is on the call. So we've been thinking about that since before all this. So we are ready to go in addition to our comms team in-house. So most definitely. Maheen, were you going to say something?
Well, I mean, you know, this is like project after my heart, so I'm super excited about it. I don't know if this question is for Genesis and Taylor, or if it's for a broader group of the Justice and Joy team, but like I know we're gonna let, and of course we should allow for what young folks are determining as priorities to inform, but like, what's the narrative? What are the narratives that you're trying to interrupt about who system impacted girls and gender expansive youth are in the context of our democracy? So like the way, I guess I want to gut check my own, because the way I talk about it is like, y'all are so critical to advancing, defending, and upholding our democracy, and yet your visions of just and democratic futures are never like contemplated. But like, is that what you would say? Like, why is this? And maybe it's a question for you, Genesis and Taylor, like, why do you think it's important? Because I think as we're talking to funders about it, knowing why you think it's important is helpful.
So I'll just hop in. It's not, what you said is basically it, but it's also, there's this barrier and this gap where it's almost like we can say everything we want, but it just won't go through all the way. Because of that lack of, I don't know if it's respect or acknowledgement or focus on what, you know, the people of Congress think is important, or them acknowledging the fact that we think these things are important and just disregarding them completely, but breaking down that barrier to have a more kind of clear insight as to what we want our roles to be, so that maybe we could start getting those roles would be really important. Because right now, I think people are throwing blind darts of what they think young people want, of what they think we should do, instead of just asking us. And we are such a diverse group. And we continue to diversify, and making sure we get all those perspectives, or as much of them as we can, be really important to kind of understanding where we want to be.
Thank you. That's super helpful. Because I think what you said about inclusion and the fake table, or like all of that stuff, is an added layer that I hadn't been thinking about. So I thank both of you for layering that in.
Yeah, I would just hop in and concur with what Genesis said. I think that creating a clear message on what we want as young people, what we see our democracy working as, and what we see our institutions working well with each other to propel us to continue our leadership and to continue using our voices to create awareness and to create equity and inclusion.
Other thoughts or questions? Thank you, Maheen.
Just also have to say publicly, I'm so excited that like there's a particular focus on polling young folks that have been impacted by the sex trade. I think there's so much richness in there, and I just want to commend. I think it's something so special that only only this community could hold.
Mhm. Thank you. Other thoughts, questions? We're happy to do individual follow-ups. So if that's something you're interested in having a longer conversation, just let us know. We'll make sure that that happens. I think just in terms of where we are, so you saw the budget for the research, it's 550,000. The total they were estimating for all of that, plus actually creating campaigns, tools, all that is about 2.3 million. So we have raised 200,000 so that's why we're able to get started tomorrow. But we still, in order just to finish the research phase, need an additional 300,000. So that's our most urgent goal. And I think that that might be it from us. Am I forgetting anything? Asking a broader team? Missing anything? No? All right. Well, I'm going to hand it back to Genesis and Taylor to close us out.
I just want to say thank you all so much for joining. And just again, like you said, I love how this is almost like a party. Often in this space, we talk and talk, and we kind of see a little action here and there. And I think it's time to let the action speak for itself. It's time to stop defending what's left of democracy and start fighting to fix it. So hopefully, this will be a long game, but I can't wait for the day when we can actually have a Zoom party and celebrate for some progression. So thank you all so much for joining.
Thank you so much, everyone. I just wanted to uplift how exciting it is as a visionary and a pioneer to see a future for my daughter and for other children in the future with a fixed democracy. Statistically speaking, parenting and pregnant and women are most system impacted. So just to see a bright future and fixing our democracy is a beautiful, beautiful gift. I'm very grateful.
Thank you all. Well, we're going to give you a little bit of time back in your day. Hopefully use it for self-care, eat, take a break, stand up, whatever. It was wonderful to see all of you. I miss you all the time. So take care and stay in touch. Let us know what you need.
Thank you so much, Jeanette, for your leadership.